3. I/Atlas. Just another interstellar object catalogued by a network of telescopes and algorithms. But then it starts behaving in ways that don't fit. It brightens, faster than any known physics would allow, 5 times faster than expected, long before it should even react to the sun's heat. This isn't some frozen relic drifting helplessly into the light. It's doing something. And right there, everything changes. If you're still watching, subscribe now. You crave more than answers. You seek what lies beyond. Subscribe now and be part of the few who never stop searching. You've seen interstellar visitors before. One I/Oumuamua came and went like a whisper, a flat, tumbling enigma with no visible outgassing, yet somehow it accelerated away from the sun. Scientists scratched their heads. Conspiracy theories bloomed. The media called it alien. The experts called it odd. But nothing conclusive emerged. Then came 2I/Borisov, a more familiar story. A textbook comet, icy shedding vapor as it neared the sun. No surprises, that one fit. That one made sense. But 3I/Atlas, it's something else entirely. First, there's the activity. Jets firing, material shedding, outgassing at a distance where other comets remain frozen solid. At nearly 10 AU out past Saturn, it was already alive, already venting. But when it vents, its path doesn't change. Not even a nudge. That's the paradox. A rock that breathes but doesn't drift. Normally when a comet vents gas, it recoils. Like a balloon losing air, it shifts, spins, drifts. But 3I/Atlas holds its course with surgical precision. That's not normal. That's not natural. That's controlled. And what's inside it might be even more unsettling than what it does. Spectral analysis brings something else to the surface, an anomalous ratio of nickel to iron. Far too much nickel, way beyond what we see in natural cosmic bodies. In metallurgy, high nickel alloys are used for strength, for heat resistance, for durability under extreme conditions. You find them in turbines. You find them in spacecraft. You do not find them in comets. So the question isn't just what is it doing, it's what is it made of, and why. Now step back. Look at the bigger picture. This thing wasn't even noticed right away. It had been drifting silently through our solar system for weeks before anyone saw it. Pre-discovery images show it lurking in old data, sliding past unnoticed. No trail, no warning. It was just there. And that's the part that shakes you. Because if something like 3I/Atlas can sneak in undetected, what else is out there? What else has already passed us by? How many other quiet visitors have entered and exited without leaving a trace? What if this one just chose to be seen? You start asking uncomfortable questions. Why would an interstellar object exhibit active outgassing at extreme distances? Why would it have a composition that doesn't match any known comet, asteroid, or planetary remnant? Why would it release visible material and not move? One possibility haunts every scientific paper, buried between cautious phrasing and statistical margins. It could be artificial, not proof, not even confirmation, but the possibility. A design, a relic, a mechanism engineered by someone or something else. It doesn't need to be transmitting signals. It doesn't need to have flashing lights or antennas or signs that scream alien. It just needs to behave in ways that natural physics can't explain. And 3I/Atlas is doing that. You don't need a flying saucer. You don't need a radio wave. All you need is an object that vents gas without being pushed, that resists the laws of motion as if it's actively compensating, as if it knows where it's going and intends to get there. This isn't just academic curiosity. This has operational implications. If this object is stabilized, if it's actively correcting its course, that suggests onboard systems, that suggests propulsion, that suggests purpose, and if it has a purpose, then someone or something gave it one. There's no solar sail, no exhaust, no emissions trail, just subtle, calculated steadiness. Either we're looking at natural physics we don't yet understand, or an artificial platform that does not want to be deflected by cosmic forces. You start thinking about the silence, the absence of chatter from the stars, the so-called great filter, all those theories about why, in a universe of infinite potential, we haven't heard from anyone else. Maybe it's because we're listening for the wrong things. Maybe instead of shouting across the stars, someone decided to send a message hidden in plain sight, a ghost ship, disguised as a comet. Not broadcasting, just watching, just passing through. Or maybe it's not a message at all. Maybe it's a probe, a sentinel, a scout. What better disguise than a comet? What better way to cross the galaxy unnoticed than as space debris? And if this is one, how many others are out there? Not everything unexplained is alien. Not everything anomalous is a signal. But when the data breaks the model, when the behavior contradicts the laws, you have to entertain the unacceptable. Is 3I/Atlas alien? Maybe not. But is it acting like something built? Absolutely. You think about the implications. If this is an artifact, whether from a lost civilization or an ongoing presence, then we are no longer alone. Not because we heard a signal, but because we saw a ship. And the silence of the stars suddenly makes more sense. Maybe they're not talking. Maybe they're watching. Maybe they've been here before. 3I/Atlas doesn't answer that question. But it forces us to ask it. It's not just about SETI anymore. Not just radio dishes and long waits and hopeful signals. Now it's about the rocks. The visitors. The things that drift in and leave no trace but a changed trajectory and a burst of gas that doesn't push. We need new tools. New frameworks. We need to watch the sky differently. Because these aren't just relics of deep space. They might be messages. They might be machines, or they might be something even stranger, technologies left behind by civilizations long gone, wandering interstellar space until they collide with another species ready to notice us. 3I/Atlas isn't a mystery to be solved. It's a mirror held up to our assumptions. About what's natural, about what's possible, about who's really out there and what they might be doing when they pass us by. Maybe this is the new SETI. Maybe the search for intelligence doesn't begin with a telescope. It begins with asking why a comet is acting like a spacecraft. And maybe, just maybe, we've already found the first clue. If you're ready to explore the possibility that we're not alone, not through fiction but through the unexplained evidence drifting through our solar system, subscribe, hit the alert. Because the next object could be even stranger, and the truth may already be here. Behind closed doors in classified briefings, university observatories, defense circles, the conversation has already shifted. The silence around 3I/Atlas isn't for lack of interest, it's caution. Because no one wants to say the words out loud, this thing might be under control. The phrase non-gravitational acceleration used to be a footnote in orbital mechanics, a rounding error. A nuisance for the math nerds. Now it's front and center, because in this case the numbers don't make sense. Outgassing should alter velocity. Reaction mass should impart a measurable push, but when you track 3I/Atlas over time, you get the same thing again and again. Stillness, purposeful, unflinching. That's not just strange. That's intentional. It behaves like it's guided by an algorithm. Not artificial intelligence in the Hollywood sense. Not some alien Siri piloting a mothership, but a form of inertial guidance, a correction loop. Think of it like a gyroscope in space, passively maintaining orientation, actively resisting drift. And the real question is this: why would a natural object need to do that? It wouldn't. So maybe it's not natural at all. Maybe it was never meant to look like a comet. Maybe the dusty coma, the faint outgassing, the reflective surface, maybe all of that is camouflage. Designed to pass as noise in a sea of celestial data, another rock with a tail. Nothing to see here. But now you're looking closer, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let's talk about the composition again, because that part isn't just suspicious, it's impossible. High nickel ratios don't just occur randomly. You don't get precision metallurgy from a cloud of stardust. These are the fingerprints of manufacturing, of processing, of deliberate material design. In human terms, nickel-dominant alloys are used in high-performance aerospace applications, jet engines, deep space components, fusion containment systems. Nickel resists corrosion, it withstands heat, it survives radiation. So when you detect a rock floating in interstellar space with an unusually high nickel-to-iron ratio, you don't think comet, you think hull. And now you're forced to consider that what you're tracking through the solar system might not be just passing through. It might have been through hundreds of light years, maybe thousands, and it's still holding together, still behaving exactly as designed. Then there's the silence. 3I/Atlas emits no radio signals, no laser pulses, no digital noise, just the cold whisper of dust and vapor. To a casual observer, it's just a quiet rock. But to anyone listening closely, that silence screams. Because real spacecraft, ours leak. Electronics hum. Thrusters chirp. Radiation spills out. But this, nothing. As if it's built to hide. And maybe that's the point. Maybe this is reconnaissance on a cosmic scale. Slow, patient, precise. No need for speed when you've got time on your side. No need to announce your presence when the whole point is not being noticed. You've heard of von Neumann probes, self-replicating machines, dispatched across galaxies to catalog, report, or observe. What if this is one of them? Not active, not flashy, just quiet, persistent, watching. What if 3I/Atlas isn't the first? What if it's the 1000th? You start to look back at history. Objects catalogued and dismissed. Odd trajectories. Unexplained anomaly. The stories start to stack up. The theories dismissed as fringe now feel like warnings that went unheard, because here's the terrifying thing. If this is engineered, then someone built it, and if someone built it, they had a reason. Maybe to explore, maybe to monitor, maybe to assess, or maybe to wait. And suddenly 3I/Atlas doesn't feel like a visitor. It feels like a scout. And scouts have missions. You ask yourself, how would we design an interstellar probe? What features would it need? Stealth, of course. Longevity, definitely. Materials that resist heat, cold, radiation. Absolutely. A way to slow down when approaching a target system. Critical. And what's 3I/Atlas doing right now? Slowing down. Not burning up. Not accelerating toward the sun. Slowing. You're not supposed to be able to do that without engines. Not in interstellar space. Not at these distances. But that's exactly what it's doing. The relative motion is decreasing. The path is flattening. It's not falling in. It's gliding in. That's maneuvering. That's intent. So now you're staring down the possibility that we are witnessing not a fluke, not a coincidence, but the approach of a controlled object. An artifact with a purpose. And we don't know what that purpose is. But whatever it is, it didn't come from us. And this might be our first contact. Not with signals. Not with flashing lights or otherworldly greetings. But with debris. With a relic. With something built by hands, or appendages, we can't begin to understand. This is the kind of discovery that changes civilizations. Not in an instant, but in the quiet horror of realizing you're being watched, that you're not the first. That someone else has already mapped your star. Already set a course. Already decided to send something, here. And maybe it's been watching for longer than we realize. That's the part that breaks your breath in two. The idea that this might be normal. That they might send these objects through thousands of systems, over millions of years, never once being detected. Because they're not meant to be detected. Not until it's time. And now you're wondering, is it time? Is that why it brightens so fast? Is that why it's shedding material so far from the sun? Is that the activation sequence? Or is it dying? A spent relic finally winding down after eons of quiet travel? Or is it doing something else entirely? We're not ready for this. Our instruments are primitive. Our models are incomplete. And yet here it is, moving through our backyard, performing maneuvers we can't explain, with a structure we can't replicate. And maybe that's the real message. Look closer, because if 3I/Atlas is real, and it is, then everything we know about the universe is suddenly out of date. You're living in a world that's been entered, touched, visited, and no one told you. Not because it was hidden, but because no one was willing to admit what they were seeing. Because science demands repeatable results, but this is a one-time event. A mystery in motion. A question hurtling through space with no guarantee of a second chance. You only get one 3I/Atlas, and it's not stopping. It'll pass us by like Oumuamua did, slip through the inner solar system, then vanish back into the dark. No radio, no contact, no answers, just that same steady trajectory, as if it came here to see what's changed, as if it came here to check. And when it's gone, we'll be left with the same silence we had before, but not the same certainty. Because now we know better. Now we know that not everything that shines in the sky is made of stone and ice. Some things are built, some things are sent, and some things are waiting for the right moment to be found. So you keep watching. Because this is how the future announces itself, not with fanfare but with anomalies. With tiny details that break the mold, with objects that shouldn't exist, doing things they shouldn't be able to do. And if we want to survive the next century as a spacefaring species, we'd better start paying attention. Because the universe isn't empty. It's occupied. The problem is how many more like it we've already missed. Because now every data set looks suspicious. Every irregular object from past decades gets a second look. Every so-called inactive comet that moved just a little too precisely. Every asteroid that never tumbled. Every transient that flared and then disappeared. Suddenly, they aren't just objects. They're candidates. Because now you're not searching for rocks. You're searching for behavior. Behavior that hints at design. Behavior that mimics nature just enough to blend in, but not quite enough to hide. Because nature is chaotic. Nature is messy. But this thing is disciplined. Almost military in its precision. It doesn't drift. It doesn't wobble. It doesn't stray. It just moves. You think about that word moves. Not tumbles. Not falls. Moves. Like it knows what it's doing. Like it's executing a sequence. Not reacting to physics but overriding it. And now you have to face a possibility far more unsettling than aliens sending messages. You have to consider the logistics of scale. If someone or something is capable of building a probe like 3I/Atlas and sending it across interstellar space, then this isn't the first. It's not special, it's routine. It's just one node in a massive galaxy-wide survey. Quiet, methodical, efficient. You build one, then 10. Then 1,000. You launch them across different star systems, knowing some will fail, some will drift. But others will arrive, quietly, patiently, without need for return signals. And over time, they learn. You wouldn't waste energy on communication. Not unless something responds. Not unless something signals back. And so they wait. That's the function. That's the logic. And if 3I/Atlas fits that pattern, then we've just tripped a wire that was laid long before we existed. Maybe long before our sun had planets. And now we're blinking into the sky, finally noticing. We weren't supposed to notice. That's what makes this moment so consequential. Because up until now, Earth has been quiet. Not technologically quiet, we've been noisy with radio waves, radar, satellites. But observationally quiet. Passive, unaware, like a civilization with its back turned to the sea, never realizing the tide was creeping in. Now the tide is here. You have to start thinking about thresholds. When does a civilization cross from irrelevant to interesting? When do the watchers decide it's time to engage? Is there a metric? A signature? The first fusion reaction? The first artificial satellite? The first time we notice one of their probes? Because if noticing is the trigger, then we just lit the flare. And maybe that's the real test. Not whether we can launch rockets. Not whether we can calculate orbits. But whether we can interpret anomalies. Whether we can look at something that doesn't fit, and say this isn't random, this was made. If we pass that test, we join the conversation. If we fail, we go back to sleep. And right now we're on the edge. Balanced between ancient silence and sudden understanding. We saw the flare. We asked the question. Now the galaxy waits to see what we do next, and it's not just astronomers watching the sky anymore. The defense community sees it too. Quietly, carefully. No public statements. Just the slow grind of strategic concern. Because if you strip away the metaphysics, the symbolism, the alien drama, you're left with one thing. An object is maneuvering inside our solar system, and we don't know why. If that object were Russian, Chinese, or even privately owned, it would trigger every alert in NORAD. It would be an active incursion. But because it came from interstellar space, everyone hesitates. No flag. No signal. No threat. Yet. But that doesn't mean it's safe. Because even if it's ancient, especially if it's ancient, then it comes from a time when humanity wasn't even a concept. That means it wasn't sent to us. It was sent for a purpose that predates us. And that's the part no one wants to say out loud. We are not the audience. We are the interruption. If 3I/Atlas was never meant to encounter intelligent life in this system, then our awareness of it is a variable the original designers never planned for. That makes us a contaminant. An unknown factor in a closed loop. That never ends well. You can theorize, hypothesize, speculate all day. But the one thing you can't deny, the one truth that outlives the models, is this: something is here, and it is not random. So what do? You keep tracking it. You study every photon it reflects, every gram it sheds, every pixel it leaves behind in telescope archives. You simulate its trajectory, not just for months, but for centuries. Where did it come from? What part of the galaxy? What velocity vector? What stellar neighborhood? You don't do this because you expect answers. You do it because you have to know. Because once you've seen something like this, once you've stared into the face of the unexplained, you either run from it, or you chase it to the ends of the cosmos. And we're chasing. Because now the hunt is on. Not just for 3I/Atlas, but for everything else that might have passed by unnoticed. We've entered the age of interstellar forensics, digging through archives, cross-referencing sky surveys, looking for that flicker of movement that didn't fit. A heat bloom that lasted a little too long. A reflection angle that didn't obey rotation. An object that slowed down, like this one, for no reason. And the next time we catch one, we'll be ready. Telescopes tuned. Spectrometers locked. Questions sharpened like blades, because this time we won't just watch it drift by. This time we'll ask the questions out loud. Not in peer-reviewed journals. Not in closed briefings. But in the open. For the world to hear. And if they're listening, if anyone out there is listening, they'll know. We noticed. We saw the signs. We broke the silence. And that changes everything. Because maybe that's all it takes. Not a handshake. Not a radio transmission. Just awareness. Just someone on a pale blue dot, looking up at the stars and saying, that doesn't belong here. That is how first contact begins. Not with lights in the sky, but with doubt. With the moment you stop assuming that every rock in the sky is dumb, blind and random, and you allow for the possibility that some of them have purpose, you're living in that moment right now. This isn't fiction, this isn't a theory. This is an object tracked, catalogued, verified by independent observatories. A real thing with real mass, real motion, and no real explanation. And it's moving through your system. Right now. So the next time you hear that old question, are we alone? You might want to ask a different one. Are we already under observation? Because if 3I/Atlas is what it appears to be, if it is, in any way engineered, then the answer isn't just yes, it's always has been. And that answer redefines what it means to be human. It means we're no longer the first. No longer the only, no longer at the top of the technological food chain. We are the observed. And we've only just noticed. If you believe that the sky holds more than just stars and dust, if you're ready to follow the clues science won't admit, and ask the questions others are too afraid to say out loud, then subscribe now. Because the watchers are here. And this is just the beginning.